What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we're going to talk about if you're trying to find the perfect disc for your bag, should you start with something overstable, perhaps move on to something understable, or even should you just go neutral? Well, heck yeah, we're going to answer that question and more. Before we dive in, we have to ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, Jolene? You having a good one? Jolene, 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 Jolene.
So catch me if I fall.
All right, so over on the Foundation Podcast Network, I run a show, a podcast we've been running for several years now called In the Bag, where the idea of the podcast was if you went to the PGA Superstore and you told them you needed new clubs, they would fit you for clubs to begin with. They would look at your game, and analyze that and your swing and say, hey, you should use these types of clubs, because I think so many people build their bag with just sort of random information out there on the internet, so why not add a little more random information, I guess, as well as just watching maybe some pros play. And I don't know how much pure thought goes into some of the discs we just put in our bag. Oftentimes it can be as simple as, hey, that is a pretty looking disc, I like that die, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the bag. To a degree, there's nothing wrong with that. This is a game that you should be having fun with, so if that's fun for you, please do that. But for the folks that are looking to get a little more competitive, we want to talk about how do you build a reliable disc? How do you choose a reliable disc, one that you can lean on for years and years to come? I think the most classic example that I have in my bag is Precious Child. Now, Precious Child does not fly like a normal pig, and because of that I ended up bagging a normal pig for a certain slot, and then I can lean on this. And because I took this from being an overstable standard pig to the flight that it has today, that has had some reliability. But not to spoil anything, we want to talk about, let's say that you were trying to add a new disc to your bag, you wanted to find that reliable comfort piece. What route would I go? Because I think there are really kind of three options. So let's talk about the pros and cons to each. For this video, I have brought 3 Innova discs. I stayed inside the same company because that way sort of the flight characteristics and even the processes of standard are the same across all of them. So what do we have here? We have a Champion Rock 3 representing our more overstable but still somewhat neutral mid-range. Next up we have a KC Rock in the Heck Yeah stamp. This is a Connor Classic. A Rock itself is going to be neutral to overstable, but in the KC plastic, that's a base to premium plastic, definitely more base, and so it's going to have its own sort of characteristics that we want to talk about. And last but not least, probably one of the most slept on molds in the Innova lineup that I basically only find them on factory second deals, but they still do have them on factory second deals, and that is the Champion Panther, which is actually understable. You can, I'll put the flight numbers up on the screen for you, but I believe it's like a 4.4-2.1, something like that. So this is actually an understable disc. First throws of the day, so let's go ahead and see. We have a storm brewing, so we're not even sure how many holes of this video we're gonna get through, but we're gonna try to get through as many as we can. So we're gonna start with the Rock 3. And just toss it out there. I would say we're playing to the yellow, but we're kind of just demonstrating the flights right off the rip, and we will talk about our pros and cons throughout the holes. So you can see there, not a great release, but holds incredibly straight. Awesome. Let's go with the KC Rock. KC Rock we got a hold of a lot better. Put that one a lot higher, but as you can see, even it held really straight. Had a little bit of right movement just from maybe pulling it right, but didn't really finish off of an incredibly neutral line. And last but not least, we have the Panther. Okay, Panther in my mind was gonna be way more understable than it was, which is a good note. Threw it nose up, but it was gonna be way more overstable. That's why it ended up over there. So let's go ahead and talk about number 1. On In the Bag, the term that we use for a disc that sort of does everything and doesn't necessarily fly like its traditional numbers is a Griffin disc. Precious Child has sort of filled our slot because that's what I call that pig that we talk about, but lots of folks will call a disc that they lean on in their bag their precious child, right? And it doesn't always have to be a putter or an approach disc. For some people, a precious child is a crave. For others, it's going to be a distance driver. Most people, it's going to be something like a mid-range or slower, just because you have more opportunities to use it and lean on it. So I think that ends up being the choice for most people. But when we're picking this disc, I think that you can really, depending on your game and where you're at and your skill level, that is where choosing your baseline for this disc really matters. If you're someone who's throwing 400 something feet, odds are you probably have already wrote off my channel, but that's fine. What you're going to choose for that slot is going to be different than someone who's throwing in the 200 to 250 range. Also, what is your natural release angle? If you're someone who naturally throws on anhyzer, then you're also probably going to go about this in sort of a reverse process than someone like me, who is a predominant hyzer thrower. You can run that Panther shot back again for him, Sci Guy, because that's kind of my like preferred just let it rip angle. And as you can see, the disc isn't flippy enough. That's not good. So let's start in the middle with the neutral option. Why would you go with the neutral option? Here, we've chosen neutrality in a somewhat different approach. The Rock and the Rock 3 are very similar molds that I would describe on the neutral to overstable side, especially the modern Rock is not as overstable as it once was, especially the Rock 3s. But I've chosen this mold in a base plastic. So why? What are the pros of going with a neutral type disc or a neutral slot to sort of become your reliable lean on disc? Well, I'd say one of the biggest pros is that you're going to have the opportunity to let it sort of show you what you're doing in your game, as well as when you're using its flight and it is very neutral, you're going to be able to shape it in a way and throw shots with it that you really want to see happen. For instance, here, I want this disc to hyzer, so I'm going to put the disc on hyzer and sort of hang it out to the right and let the neutrality of it be influenced by the angle and method of which I'm throwing it. See, neutral disc, but I have it on a really overstable line, which ended up shorting its distance quite a bit, because at no point when you watch that disc fly does it look like it's actually neutral. And that's the beauty of going with a neutral option, is that you're going to have the opportunity to learn angle control in your game very quickly, while also getting to see, because you're probably throwing it on some more extreme angles in order to get those shots to work, you're going to get to see how that disc changes and adapts over time. Something we're going to talk about throughout this entire video is this idea of seasoning in. We are throwing little plastic circles across the globe, and as we do this, whenever the disc hits the ground, it hits the tree, or even honestly for people to just throw really hard, just using the disc is going to cause little wear and tear happening to the plastic, which is going to over time adjust the actual flight of the disc. So knowing that this disc is going to season in, it's going to change its flight. Now, the premium plastics of the world are designed to hold the flight characteristics and increase the durability of the disc. So going with a neutral disc on the base plastic, this is another reason that I enjoy sort of choosing this option, because the base plastic is going to wear faster, so it's going to get to its most seasoned or its most aggressively understable version of itself faster. For instance, here, I threw that on such extreme hyzer that we threw it straight into a tree. Now, thankfully, Casey Pro said it was a base plastic, but it's definitely on the more durable side, so I'm not even really seeing where it hit the tree, but I know, there it is. I know that it hit the tree, but it only has like a small white spot that you probably can't even see on camera on the rim. So this is very fantastic. I love how a neutral disc allows me to adapt my game to the disc, or I can adapt the disc to my game is probably the better way to put it. And I think if you're a newer player, landing on something more neutral is always good, because it is a litmus test. It's going to tell you exactly what you're doing with your game. And speaking of seeing what you're doing with your game, I want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Goodr. Because as you can see here, we are rocking some Goodrs on our face today. This is the sort of like a matte black style, but the style is called a Ginger's Soul. I love the creative names that come with each of the Goodr style profiles, and there are a ton of different even lens shapes for those different styles. And then if you find a lens shape that you really like or it fits your face, there's probably a multitude of color options available as well. So many options. And you may think if you're looking at sunglasses, often I feel like you're either picking up that $5 pair off of the drugstore little sunglasses rack that you're just expecting that maybe it'll make it through a day or two of vacation, or you're spending the high dollars trying to grab some premium sunglass brand and now you're terrified to ever use them. Well, with Goodr, styles start at just $25 and they are premium. They have UV protection. They are polarized. It is fantastic. I love these styles and my wife loves them as well. When she saw them, I think initially you look at the fashion that I may choose in my life, which may not always be the best. But my wife immediately started scrolling through the website, and before we knew it, she had 5 different pairs in her cart. And I was a little nervous at first when you see 5 pairs of sunglasses. Once again, these styles are super affordable, and you can head to the link that Guy's gonna put here or the link in the description, and you can save yourself a little discount on your order of Goodrs, which is gonna save you a couple dollars. You're gonna be feeling good, you're gonna be looking good on the course, you're gonna know you're styling, you're balling out there. And we just all know that's gonna make you play better. So thank you to Goodr for sponsoring what we're doing here on the channel, and thank you for supporting what we're doing via Goodr. Now, I want to talk briefly about the cons of going with the neutral disc, and that is that we talked about you can shape the disc to do really anything, but also that means that the disc itself isn't necessarily doing anything. So it's going to be highly influenced by your form. So if you have a day where you're just off or things aren't firing, the disc doesn't have a lot of auto correction to sort of help you out. If you find you're over releasing on hyzer that day, it's not going to be this inherently understable disc that wants to help you get that easy distance. And conversely, if you find you're having a little bit of the yoinks and you need that overstability to come back, that's not what the disc is going to do. This is to help you refine your game very quickly. And once again, if you want it to season in to be this beautiful version of itself, going with the base plastic is going to help get it there a lot faster. Going with something on the understable side is really fantastic, because one of the reasons that I really love understable plastic is that because my stock release angle is a hyzer, I feel like I can get some really cool shaping out of an understable disc. Because if I want to throw an understable disc flat, that should allow it to turn to the right the whole time. If I want to have it stand up a little bit, I can throw it on hyzer. Maybe not as much hyzer as we did on hole 1, but you know, you live and learn. So for instance, here I'm throwing 2 baskets that there is one basket that's a par 4 that is 500 something feet and it's down to the right. So if I wanted to throw this disc on maybe a little bit of a hyzer, watch it stand up and then hopefully turn the whole way, that would be the dream. Now, what I'm immediately learning is that either I'm having a interesting day of throwing a little more nose up than I'm crediting for, or Guy's laughing at me and you're all laughing when Guy put the flight numbers on, because the Panther is just not as understable as I'm remembering it being. Just we're really gonna put things to the test here. I'll use this piece. And there's an OB road to the left, but we're gonna try to throw this Panther just flat and see if it'll turn for us. And see what Mr. Robbie C is screwing up today. Yeah, that disc has a little more stability than for some reason I'm giving credit for today. I mean, are we in a tailwind? Like, what is, nope, no wind. Don't know what to tell you, but let's talk about why understable discs, not this one apparently, are going to be helpful for you. So traditionally what understable discs do is they're designed to resist the flight path you put them on. So you can get some much easier distance and reliable distance out of them. I think initially people have this like macho man mentality about throwing understable discs, and I bragged on him on In the Bag, but I want to brag on him again here on the main channel. I look at Anthony Bedanza, who his Tour Series disc this year, or last year as well, was the Sphinx, which is a -3-1 fairway to control driver, and that thing goes so far. Like it throws so far. And you have players like himself, Broderick, even you put it in the hands of Joe Revere, who throws really far as well. And so these players can use an understable disc to get some pretty fantastic distance options out of it. And I think if you're looking for a workhorse that you want to rely on, an understable disc helping you get that easier distance can be absolutely perfect, because it's not as easy as just, oh, I picked an understable disc, therefore I throw far now. You still have to have the proper mechanics in order to crush the disc and do what Bedanza and Broderick and those guys are doing to throw far. But when having to use less effort to create that distance, you're allowed to focus part of your mental and your game on other aspects as well, which can be a huge relief for you. And I really do think that that understable option, maybe if it's not super understable, once again, perhaps a little more understable than I'm finding this Panther to be today, you're gonna have some shot shaping opportunities here. Like there, I tried to throw it flat, probably still threw it on some hyzer, but you saw that it had a little bit of turn to it and then it hit a tree and got deflected left. But we have shot shaping opportunity available to us. Now, let's talk about the cons real fast if you choose something understable as your workhorse. Now, this con probably feels the most obvious right off the rip, and that is that if you start with something understable and it seasons in, as all plastic is going to do as you begin to throw it, eventually it's just going to get to that super flippy state where when we throw very understable things, the wind becomes much more of a factor in affecting it, right? If you have a slight headwind, that's gonna make things less stable or more understable. And if it's already starting in the understable category and it seasons in, then it's going to be tough. This is one of the reasons why, unless you plan on throwing it rarely or not as much, I never truly try to advise people to buy really understable discs in a base plastic, because that base plastic is gonna season in even faster, and when it seasons in fast, it's going to make that disc go to, I'm not gonna say unusable status, but certainly less reliable status. We talked about one of the beauties of using an understable disc is that you can sort of turn your brain off to create easy distance. But if it becomes too understable, now you're questioning, can I put as much power into the shot, or am I overpowering the disc, causing it to not stay in the sky? And those factors can really start taking away from the mental of the easy distance you were getting to distracting you. And I think sometimes people rely on a disc too long and it becomes too understable to become reliable out on the course. Once again, I never want to use the phrase that it's too flippy for me. I think it's just a little untrustworthy because it requires so much mental focus in order to use it. Which there are days that I feel like Precious Child is getting there for me. And that of, oh man, I want to throw it on this shot and it's just a little too flippy now for that. But that sort of transitions us to the last option that you can use for your overstable option becoming reliable. Now, what's nice about grabbing an overstable, a neutral to overstable disc and bringing it in a premium plastic is that it's going to have this overstable flight for a longer period of time. You can see there, we start it at the basket and it zooms. It goes pretty far and it sails over. We didn't even really start it too far right of the basket, and I didn't feel like we threw it on a ton of hyzer. It was pretty flat and it came out still faded, and I'm probably 30 or 40 feet left of the basket. Had a guy in the comments disagree with me recently about how overstable flights can be the most reliable, and he said it was probably for the pros to feel that. But I think for lots of people, discs are going to fly overstable to begin with, especially if you were a newer player watching this. And by overstable, that means they just want to get to the ground faster, or they want to lean into whatever flight path you put them on. So for a right-handed backhand player, when you throw this way, the spin that you're imparting on the disc makes it want to get to the ground left. It makes it want to go left. And when you throw an overstable disc, it wants to really get to the ground left. Knowing that the disc is going to do what it wants to do naturally, it does have some auto correction. This is also a path that if you find yourself who has a natural anhyzer release, oftentimes the more understable disc choices are going to feel in that less reliable category for you because they're burning over, they're not staying in the air, and it's going to have some auto correction to it. So I think that this can be a really great option to become a reliable disc, because not only do you know what it's going to do, it wants to have a certain flight because you picked it in a premium plastic. It's going to hold that flight characteristic for significantly longer. but it also inherently embraces the idea that the more this disc wears in, it is going to hold that flight characteristic for longer. If it's starting in the more overstable side of the chart, when it seasons in, it's going to become more neutral, which means that it has the opportunity to be in your bag longer and have a little more reliable options. This is where Precious Child really shined. I found pigs in mid to late 2020, and I ended up securing one of these Ricky pigs around that time. I actually bought 2 of that specific run. They were twins, they were the same color, same stamp, everything. And I remember playing Wallace State, the Lion's Den, and I threw one into the water on hole 18, and I was devastated. I was chasing after it, I was diving into the water fully clothed, trying to find it, and just wasn't even able to find it. So Precious Child of today went into the bag after that round because I needed to replace my Overstable putt and approach disc. And other than a small stint where we were in contract negotiations with Dynamic Discs, that pig has not left my bag. Now the shot shape that it has, the opportunities that it has for me to use on the course have changed dramatically over the last 4.5 years. But I do want to point out that one of the biggest cons of using the Overstable option is that most often when you go with the Overstable option, because it wants to get to the ground faster or lean into the spin you foot on it faster, that means that traditionally you're going to get less distance. So right off the rip, you're going to find that your reliable disc may not be the one you're relying on as often, depending on the courses you go play, simply because, well, they just aren't giving me access to as many birdie looks as other discs are, and therefore I'm not leaning on them enough. I think about my Cigara that I have in my bag. I really love my best friend Cigara that's in there, but it is the most overstable of cigars I throw. So because of that, I'm leaning on it a little less than I am the other Cigara that I have in my bag. But because I'm throwing that Cigara a little more, it's getting the opportunity to season in quite a bit faster. So you can sort of see this catch-22 of if you go anywhere besides the neutral option on building your reliable disc, is that you either start with something that's very usable and gives you free or easy distance right off the rip, but its time and opportunity that it can have to stay in your bag is less than if you go here, where this is more of an investment that you're trying to make. Which brings us to sort of the immediate and one other reminder that I have to give when it comes to if you choose this option, because I think this sounds the most appetizing for most people, to have that really reliable disc you can lean on for years. What I've got here is 2 zones. We have, ooh, this is a color shift. Yeah, a little bit of a color shift UV glow zone that is happening that we just got over at Foundation Discs. It has the new stock Build Your Game stamp. Really, really cool. But this is a UV glow zone that is overstable. And if I were to use this as my overstable putt and approach disc, because it's really overstable and it's in premium plastic, it's gonna take a really long time to season in, which means that it's going to hold whatever that flight is for a long time. I know people that have had this type of a zone put in their bag and they have had the same zone still holding that overstable putt and approach slot for them for years. But then you have the people that have like a jawbreaker zone that it sort of adapts and changes over time. And one thing that I want to make sure that you realize is that most often we can say, hey, I love the zone. I want the zone to be my reliable shot, and I want to have a world that I just have a bunch of zones in my bag that cover all of my shots. But at the end of the day, a zone's still going to be a zone. So we have to make sure that we're not overreaching for what we expect the zone to be. For instance, this is stock zone thrown flat on a backhand. And we even tried to pull that to the right a little bit, and you can see that it's still faded back. And then this is jawbreaker zone, tried to throw on the same line. You can see that it turns, but it didn't burn all the way over. It's never going to be a Rolo. It's never going to be a flippy Mako 3. It's still a zone. And what I love about that is that something like that I can rely on, and no, I can throw it on some turnover lines and not be worried that it's going to burn over when I throw it on that turnover line, because it's still a zone and still has that reliability. Now, once again, the big con to that is that you got to remember, I've had Precious Child in the bag for over 4 years, which means that it shouldn't be replaceable right off the bat. And you have to be okay with that. If you decide to go with the really overstable option or you season in a disc, there comes a moment where you have to start asking yourself, am I okay losing this disc? And if you find yourself, this is the right disc for the shot, but I'm too afraid to lose that disc, then maybe it's time to go find something a little more stock that can fill that slot. For instance, I have in my backups in my truck for when I play tournaments, if I throw Precious Child, which I obviously really don't want to lose Precious Child, one of the biggest things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get an ace with Precious Child because I don't have one yet, so that I can officially retire the disc. And honestly, Straight Pig is probably going to fill its slot pretty quickly. It's not going to start out as flippy as Precious Child is right now, but we'll get it to that point, right? But if I were in the middle of a tournament, a 2-round C tier in town, and I lost Precious Child in round 1, well, that may be a shot that I'm relying on. So what do? I have a stock option in the neutron range that flies incredibly similar to how Precious Child flies these days. So I think that that is a huge important piece, is find what that disc is doing and what is a stock version of it, so that if you lose your Griffin disc or your Precious Child or this reliable disc that you, after this video, have a hand selected and fallen in love with, I just can't encourage you enough to make sure that you have backups, because I'll tell you, having backups makes it so much better, and you end up throwing the disc so confidently, because that reliable disc, I'm now not afraid of. If I lose it, there's just going to be nothing like it that I'll ever throw again. It's more so an investment of, if I lose this disc in the short term, disc B could be the replacement option, but I also, when I need it, I can start working on the next one. And even find yourself, if your disc is changing slots, let that disc work its way through your bag and replace it, and now you're doing the act of cycling, which is where this disc started in this slot. It doesn't fly like that anymore, so it moves down here, because I still like the flight of it, but I need this flight still as well. So you put a fresh one in there, and then they all start working together beautifully. It is my favorite aspect of disc golf, is in bag building, the idea of cycling. And I hope that this video helps you get started on your cycling journey, whether you're starting on the neutral to overstable side, or you're starting on the neutral to understable side, however you choose to tackle it. So I hope this video was helpful, and it's not just like scattered thoughts. Truly, I think that you can't go wrong however you decide to approach this or tackle this, because depending on your game, the disc you prefer to use, whatever it may be, your choice could be vastly different than my own. I know for me, I love that hyzer release angle, so I don't have a ton of silly overstable stuff in my bag that I'm relying on quite often. But if I had a friend who had a natural and hyzer release angle, then he and I are gonna build our bags quite a bit different. And because of that, that's why I wanna include all 3 options here. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know, what is your reliable disc that you've either season in, where did it start, what kind of disc is it? Would love to see and hear about your reliable options in the comments below. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're gonna leave you with the birdie.